Hey, this is Leif Ganford. I played the cash register thief in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, this is Rich McDonald, and I play Commander David Mason on Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And you're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldavar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek Podcast.
Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek Podcast.
Hey, it's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Plo Koon in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Everything Geek, the podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Ruari, and joining me today is a very special guest. We have director Saul Metzstein, who is best known as the director of the Doctor Who episodes Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, A Town Called Mercy, The Snowmen, The Crimson Horror, and The Name of the Doctor, director of Late Night Shopping and Gaiax, and the director on Ripper Street, The Musketeers, You, Me, and the Apocalypse Are Zoo, and Upstairs Downstairs. So how are you today, Saul?
I'm good, thank you. Very good.
It's a pleasure to have you join us today on the podcast. You're actually our first ever director interview, so that's pretty impressive.
I think.
Yeah, a long time coming, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great to have you join us today. So, getting right into my questions to you today, Saul. How did you decide you wanted to become a director?
You know, I don't know if you ever have maybe some people have a moment where they actually think that's what I want to do. It was just something that occurred to me because I liked watching films and I thought it might be a fun thing to do. I don't have a very advanced reason for doing it. It just seemed like something that was quite interesting, and I have very broad interests, and it just seemed something you could do that encompassed a lot of things, encompassed visual things and storytelling and bossing people around and that sort of thing. So it sort of appealed to me, but I don't think there was a special moment.
Well, I'm sure the bossing people around bit was very fun.
Yeah, it's sort of fun in a way. Well, no, I say bossing people around, but it's a marvelous thing to be in charge of a group of people, all of whom who are better at their individual thing than you are. So you're sort of exploiting people in a very nice way. You know, like actors can act and they do amazing things, and you can sort of encourage them, but actually they do it, or cameramen know where to light, or you know, that sort of thing. So it's quite when I say bossing people around, it isn't just the sheer pleasure of making people do what you want them to do. It's also the thrill of them doing something that you didn't know how to do, but you sort of knew roughly what you wanted, you know.
So that's a very interesting way of looking at it. Now, if I'm ever bossing someone around, I'll just tell them, "Oh, I'm just exploiting you in a nice way."
I didn't say nice. Maybe I did say nice. I meant in a positive way, bringing out the best in people. It's a very. Yeah. I mean, directing is a very interesting thing because, you know, it's like conducting an orchestra. You don't write the music, and you don't know how to play all the instruments, but you somehow are there to just sort of channel it all. So it's a sort of interesting. You're not entirely in charge either. You're sort of guiding it, but it wants to go its own way too. So it's a sort of funny process, but very rewarding, very interesting.
That's a really great way of looking at it. Moving on to my second question. You've directed a number of films and TV shows in episodes in your career, but which film and or TV show did you find the most challenging to get right initially?
Challenging. I think, but for logistical and technical reasons, I made this film called Guy X, which was extremely challenging, and I'm not sure that everybody would necessarily say that I got it right. So that would be it was very complicated. It was shot in different countries and with all sorts of logistical problems, and that was very complicated. I made this program for the BBC called Micromen. I don't know if you've seen it, which is about the early days of home computing in the sort of 70s and 80s in Britain. And that was very difficult to make because it's one of these BBC 4 things where the budgets are very low, but it was actually a very complicated little story with all sorts of details from the period and things like that. And that's also been very complicated. Funnily enough, television, like programs like Doctor Who, they're technically difficult, but in some ways they're quite easy because you have the BBC behind you, and it's never going to fail. You're never going to fail to finish an episode of Doctor Who, and so in some ways that's quite liberating.
Yeah, it's very interesting indeed. Moving on to my third question, how were you initially hired to direct multiple episodes of Doctor Who?
I was originally hired by the producer Marcus Wilson to direct a block, and a block is usually 2 episodes. So I was originally hired to direct to make Dinosaurs in a Spaceship in a town called Mersey. And I had previously worked for BBC Wales making Upstairs Downstairs, so I think that was the direct connection. In terms of why I ended up doing so many episodes is because basically I was there, they must have liked my work, and they kept handing me new scripts. And I have this terrible thing is if something is a good script, I desperately don't want anyone else to make it. So I just keep saying yes. So in the end, I was meant to be there for a couple of months, and I was there for 14 months. So I was there for just over a year, and I just sort of kept making one onto the other. Strictly speaking, I did 3 blocks, I think, because I think in my case the Christmas episode was connected to Crimson Horror, but I'm not entirely sure how that worked.
It's very interesting, and it makes sense as well that you were initially hired for 2 episodes, the 2 you mentioned, Dinosaurs and the Spaceship and the Town Called Mercy, because they were both back-to-back episodes. Yeah, so...
They were the first episodes of that season. They were the first ones to be shot. So I sort of started shooting at the beginning of that, because the shooting period is all continuous. The crew worked for 9 months. So I was actually the first one there starting, and I was also with The Name of the Doctor, the last one, filming as well. So I sort of spanned all of it.
That is interesting as well, because it's interesting to hear behind the scenes, like whenever... I feel like for some people, whenever they see, a list of TV show episodes for a season, they just think immediately that's the order they were shot in, because...
No.
Yeah, I know, it's so interesting, because a lot of people probably think that, but it's interesting that your 2 episodes were shot before the episode that actually did start the season. Yes. It's interesting.
Yes, and then there's other peculiar things, because of complications of schedule and availability and all sorts of things. So quite often you end up shooting little bits of other people's episodes, and other people shoot little bits of your episodes and things like that. So it's quite a complicated process. I mean, essentially you try and do as much of your own as possible, but I did all sorts of little bits of other stuff as well. And I also, when we were there, I also did that the little web series Pond Life as well, which was also done in little chunks in between other things.
It's very interesting. I mean, I'm sure our listeners now will actually realize just how complex a TV show schedule is,
TV show schedules are an incredible world of pain. and particularly a show like Doctor Who, where a lot of TV programs have one set they keep going back to. Like if it's a police program, you keep going back to the police station, that sort of thing. Doctor Who has the TARDIS, but apart from that, it's pretty much anywhere in the galaxy, as long as you can film it in Cardiff. But or a little bit went to Spain. Sometimes people go to London, but it's not. But it can be anywhere. So it means you have such logistical problems, and it also means at the beginning of, when you first, like when I first read the script of Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, there's the bit describing the dinosaur, them riding on the back of the dinosaur riding through the spaceship, and I thought, we have no chance of making that work. And I kept saying to them, I said, you realize we're never going to make this happen. And miraculously, through incredible human endeavor and pig-headedness, it somehow happens. But I genuinely, when I first read that, I thought, not a chance. So.
That is really interesting. It's very interesting indeed. Moving on to my fourth question. If you had to choose, which was your favourite Doctor Who episode you got to direct and why?
To be honest, I think for me it's Dinosaurs in a Spaceship, I have to say. Partially because it was my first one. Partially because I think it's just so crazy. It's such a mad script. And everything was sort of crazy in it. And everything was technically very complicated. But it was right at the beginning of the season when you're all fresh and you can just think you can do anything. And I think that one is it's in a way technically the most difficult and possibly technically the most most successful in a way, because they'd already decided it was going to be full of computer generated graphics and all sorts of things. It was quite complicated stuff, and it was very ambitious like that. And I just think it's so crazy. I mean, I just think in the first couple of minutes, you're in ancient Egypt, you're in the future, you're in somebody's house in London or wherever they live. Actually, I can't remember where does Amy Pond live. I can't remember where she lives. And then you're a few minutes later you're on a beach being chased by pterodactyls. These huge robots chasing you. It couldn't be crazier. I mean, I think the Christmas one I enjoyed a lot as well. I sort of in each of their own ways I enjoyed it. But I think the dinosaur one, for its sheer level of absolutely, as I said before in the last answer, I never thought we'd be able to make it. And usually as the director, you're meant to be the one full of enthusiasm who thinks you can make it. So it was a bit of a crazy process.
That's very interesting, and it was kind of awkward because you just asked me where Amy's house was, and I was like, wait, I don't remember that. So I literally just went on the Doctor Who wiki, and apparently it's in Ledworth or somewhere.
Ledworth, that's exactly where it is. No, you're exactly right. See, I've forgotten it all. But yes, that's where it is.
Yeah.
So it's also, of course, really it's in Cardiff, but everything's really in Cardiff, so it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, so I literally just looked at Ledworth on the Doctor Who wiki. It says English Village. I really know it was in Cardiff.
Yes.
Yeah, very funny indeed. So, moving on to my fifth question. Aside from the Doctor himself, one of the most memorable parts of Doctor Who is the monsters and aliens that feature. From the episodes you directed, do you remember any of the monsters being particularly challenging to bring to life?
Well, I can tell you a very funny Dinosaurs in a Spaceship story. The bad guy who's played by David, I can't remember anyone's name. David Bradley, and what was the character called?
Solomon.
Solomon. His spaceship. I don't know if you remember. It's like a black, sleek spaceship, and it's about 6 foot high inside. And nobody had told me that the robots were about 8 foot high. And I remember the robots meant to get inside his spaceship, and it was a sort of Spinal Tap moment when you stand there and suddenly these 8 foot robots turned up, and you're like, we've got an enormous problem here. That's properly challenging. And in the end, in that end scene where the Doctor sort of electrocutes them, what it is actually is we got the robots to take off their bottom halves. So they're just they're like ridiculous sort of creatures with little legs coming out the bottom, but you just can't see it. But that was really like Doctor Who is, when you're making it, because it's made very quickly and it's technically very difficult. There's always some incredible problem like that, and that really was like the whole crew like laughing and then just like, oh, how are we actually going to do this? We're in desperate trouble. I mean, another challenging one was the Gunslinger himself. It's very challenging because the poor guy has to be in sort of 6 hours of makeup, and then we were boiling in the south of Spain. I think it's challenging for him, but that was a very difficult thing. Mrs. Gillyflower's Mr. Sweet is a hell of a thing to deal with, partially because he's so unbelievably unpleasant looking. I mean, my only thing in Doctor Who is I never got to play with Daleks or Cybermen, which is a shame. And I never did any of these episodes where they appear, which I would have liked.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so interesting. Like 8-foot robots, those would have been so big. You need like a giant open area to use them, like a beach or something.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, though, again, in Dinosaurs in a Spaceship, that set of where they landed when the Triceratops go past, that's the biggest set they've ever had in Doctor Who.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, because that one is proper enormous. And actually, I think it's even bigger than the studios they film in now. That was filmed in the old studios in a place called Upper Boat. And the new studios in Cardiff Bay, I don't think could even fit that set. That was a proper big, proper big crazy set.
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine 8-foot robots. Like, I could definitely see how that was a problem at least.
But as I said, every day there's some incredible problem where you're like, nobody told me the robots were going to be 8 foot high. You're thinking of so many things. You never have the moment to ask somebody, wouldn't it be worth, how big are the robots? It's never a question that you would start asking.
Yeah.
Hell of a day.
I can completely understand. Like, I would have had a nightmare, really, if I just walked in, doing my job as a director, and you see 8-foot robots, and I'm like, who ordered 8-foot robots? Like, whose bright idea was that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, really funny though.
Difficult, yeah.
Yeah. Moving on to my 6th question. You were voted the best director of 2013 by readers of Doctor Who magazine around the time you worked on the show. How did this make you feel to be acknowledged like this by fans of the show for your work, and how does it compare to other awards you've been nominated for and won?
It's nice because I think there's a nice thing because Doctor Who fans are so fiercely loyal and sort of really passionate. So that's kind of a nice. It's kind of a nice thing. I don't think when you're making things, really, you ever think about that it would be nice to be rewarded, if you know what I mean. I personally, it's not how my brain works, but in a show like that's fun because fans are really enthusiastic, and in their own way they believe they own the show, and I think that's quite a nice thing. It's like people supporting a football team. They get really wildly passionate, and usually it's telling everyone how badly the manager is doing and what they would do better, and it's a sort of very endearing version of that. So it's nice, but yeah, it's good. It's good. It's interesting. Technically, in things, it's a very as I said, it's a very difficult program to make because it's very fast and it's very demanding. But actually, the scripts are clever, and I think Matt Smith is an amazing actor. And actually, because if you have an amazing lead actor and clever scripts, it's not that difficult because it sort of works, and you're just trying to make it as fun as possible. But it's not like a terrible struggle in that way. So it's a sort of fun, crazy job with occasional moments of high drama and torture and lots of moments of standing in, cold beaches suffering and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can completely understand that. Just not every job is easy. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, but in Doctor Who, it's quite interesting. Is every day is difficult. In terms of technically, you never have a day in Doctor Who where you think, this is just one of these easy days. Every day is tough. In a physical sense or in a logistical sense. Every day is pretty hellish, I have to say. It's very tough. So it's about the hardest program I've made in that sense.
Especially when you wake up in the morning and the first thing you see is an 8-foot robot.
Exactly. But that's just the one problem I can remember. I mean, I remember when we shot again in Dinosaurs in a Spaceship. I remember when we shot the scene with the pterodactyls chasing them down the beach. All our equipment got swept away by the tide, which came in incredibly rapidly on an unbelievably stormy day.
Oh my God!
Literally, people sort of trying to hold on to the stuff before it gets swept into the Bristol Channel. I mean, it was tough. Everybody on the Western one got terrible sunburn from filming in Spain in the boiling heat. They all get sunstroke, and then the bits we shoot at night, you all freeze to death. All the stuff in the Christmas one, every exterior scene's torture because you're filming snowy winter in the middle of summer. So more or less everything is quite an ordeal in that respect.
Yeah,
but fun and crazy, and you all know you're doing something fun and crazy. It's just tough.
Yeah, certainly interesting to hear about some of the problems that go on behind the scenes.
Every day is an exciting problem, and I don't. Yeah, but I think what happens is the crew get sort of they get used to it, and it becomes the sort of it's the sort of thing that keeps them interested, if you know what I mean. Because if you do like a period drama or a cop show or any of these things, it's kind of the same every single day.
Yeah.
Whereas Doctor Who, you have absolutely no idea what terrible thing is going to happen next.
Absolutely. So moving on to my final question for you, Saul, do you have any upcoming directing works or any other project you would like to talk about?
Well, I'm just finishing. I've done 5 episodes of a new series which was called Apocalypse Slough and is now called You, Me and the Apocalypse. And I'm just finishing it now, and it's a 10-part series. I've done 5 parts of it, and it's a comedy about the end of the world, a meteorite about to hit Earth and kill everyone, starring Rob Lowe as a priest and various other people, including Pauline Quirk and Megan Mullally and Jenna Fisher. And it's a sort of just a crazy, and Matthew Bainton, who's probably the lead from Horrible Histories. I don't know if you know who he is, who's marvelous. And it's just an incredibly crazy story. Again, tricky like Doctor Who, logistically complicated. We shot it in Britain and in South Africa and in Malta, and it's sort of set all over the world. And I think it'll be great fun when it's finished. And I worked in it, and also we had various crew members from Doctor Who. The guy who shot most of it is a guy called Stephen Pearson, who has shot like a dozen Doctor Who's. He shot most of my episodes before, so it has a little bit of Doctor Who-ness to it. It's got a little bit of that craziness, and I think it will be fun once we've finished it. I think it even starts coming out quite soon on Sky.
It's very interesting. So I'll be sure to keep an eye out for those then. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast today, Saul, and thanks so much for joining us.
No problem.
And hopefully we can talk to you again at some point.
Okay. I'll try and remember more things.
No, you remembered a lot, which is pretty good considering, you were a little bit nervous about how much you would remember.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll talk to you again soon then. Bye, and thanks again for joining us.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye. So that was our interview with director Saul Metzstein, the first ever director we've interviewed on the podcast, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. So time, that didn't even make sense. I apologize for that. So time to wrap up today's show. Make sure to check out our podcast links, Check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official-everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us at the below email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comiccast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the host's YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/separatist-destroyers. Check out Saul Metzstein's website, www.metzstein.com, and check out Channel 1 where we broadcast live from, www.channel138.com. So geeks out, everyone.